Hello and welcome to the special championship edition of WCS Sports Connection. I'm your co-host, Jimmy Qualls, and with me as always, Tate Mathews. We've got two guys with us today. Scott Blade, head coach of Independence High School, 5A state champions, and Will Hester, head coach of Ravenwood, the 6A state champions. How you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Thank you for being here. Let's talk real quick before we go in. I want to throw some data points at you what's happened this year in the WCS Sports Conference in football. 7 of 8 teams got in the playoffs, first time ever. 5 teams won a first-round game. That was the first time ever as well. 3 in the state semis, first time ever. 2 in the state championship game, first time ever. 2 state champions, first time ever. What has transpired from previous years to this year that's made our group so strong?
They realigned us.
I was hoping you'd say other than that, but anything other than the realignment. Obviously, the realignment helped us, but our teams, our quality of teams have gone up.
Well, I think the quality's always been strong. We just beat each other up in order to get there. You look at last season, for instance. There were great teams played last year, but we had to play our way through each other in order for Ravenwood to get there last year. So, I mean, the strength's always been there. I would put the coaching in Williamson County up against Indy in the state of Tennessee, and in order for us to get multiple teams there, they did split us up, and that did make the road a little easier.
Well, like you said, in the previous alignment, out of the big 6 schools that played each other, only 2 would have been able to get in. So that would have put our total at a 4 if you include the Fairview and Page and 3 and 4A. But this year they split us up on the 5A level. Coach Blade ran through his group. 6A level, you run through your group. And even though we played some interleague play, did that help down the stretch, Coach Blade, with your guys?
Well, Dr. Qualls, actually it did. Playing some good quality teams to start off and prepare you for a region. And then obviously going into the playoffs, getting to see them again. But those guys sure helped out with better quality competition.
Well, the Tennessee Titans Coach of the Year, Coach Blade, also finished 15-0 for the first time ever in WCS Sports Conference history. We have an undefeated team. Coach Hester finished 14-1. Let's start on the independent side of things. What does the championship thus far? What has it done, or your run? What has it done for the school culture?
Well, the school's been tremendous since day one. The student section, our fan base, our community has rallied behind this team, and they've enjoyed it. They take a huge pride in it, and we hope that that's carrying over, and we see it carrying over into the basketball season. We hope it carries over throughout the course of the year. But the whole Independence community has been tremendous in their support and their excitement about this.
And I think so. It spills over into other sports. As you see right now, the basketball team obviously undefeated up until this point. It's so important that your football team get off onto such a good start for your team. What about for Ravenwood?
Well, Doc, we say that football's the front porch of the school, and obviously if football starts well and it gets the energy level up for everything, then it makes the school year go a lot better. I mean, I'm sure Scott would say the same thing. We basically played the entire first semester. Mm-hmm. I mean, we got exams starting this week. We just finished up a week ago. So football took up the whole first semester, and it got both these schools off to a good start. And now it's time to move on to basketball.
Dr. Qualls, one thing I think that also needs to be addressed is sometimes it goes unnoticed, but these guys, a regular season's 10 games. Both these guys played 15, so we really won't see it until next year, but really you guys got another half of a season in. That's 5 more weeks of practices, 5 more weeks of meetings and film study and things like that. And when a lot of guys had to go home, so when you all go into spring practice, you all are already 5 games up. This second year in a row, you've done that. So really, in 2 seasons, you've played 3. As far as building depth and things like that, you cannot put a price tag on that, can you?
No, and it's the same thing with college teams. They love the bowl preparation because it's like a whole nother spring ball. For us, it ends up being a whole nother 2.5 spring balls. And building on next year, obviously we're going to have to replace a lot of seniors, and so them getting those extra 5 weeks of reps, is huge for our program and its development.
Absolutely, it doesn't take a PhD to realize that practice time makes you better, and our guys have got that, and I believe that's the reason that pushed us over the edge this year is that, the first, 2 years that we were there, we played 2 rounds of the playoffs the first year and then 5 the second year. So I think that our seniors this past year reaped the benefit of that.
Dr. Qualls, there's one more first. Coach Blade is the only two-time Tennessee Titans Coach of the Year recipient. Did you know that?
Well, it's obvious.
Did you know that?
It's obvious, Tate, that we are surrounded by brilliance here today. So let's. I mean, these two guys are the hottest commodity in football in the state of Tennessee. So, what does a championship do for your program? In other words, I'm a family. I come into the school system, or I come into Williamson County. What does winning a state championship do for me to making my decision whether I go to a different school or I go to your school?
Well, I mean, I think it's to get you in the door. You know, I mean, obviously once they're there, discussions and things of that nature. But, you know, they're going to look through the website or whatever. They're going to see 2015 state champ on there, and it's going to get you a little bit of extra excitement, I guess. And then once they get in the door, you know, the facilities and how well maintained they are and the feel they get about the program, I think will close the deal. But I think it definitely gets you more access than you would have had.
Coach Blade, same question to you. I mean, this is nothing new to you. You've won 3 in 3 different states, you know, and it's a commonplace. But what does it do for the future of your program and for those families coming in? I know obviously we don't like to throw the word recruit around, but that's what we do on a day in, day out basis with our school system, whether it's academics, whether it's the arts, or whether it's the athletics. And what does it do for your school system or your school community, rather, when people are trying to make a choice of whether to attend Independence High School or somewhere else?
Well, you know, Doctor, we have great academics too. So that's the whole picture, the admin, the faculty that's there, and then you throw in, you know, a successful football team. And so if you're looking to move into Williamson County and you're looking, like Will said, there's a lot of positives in addition to the academics, in addition to just the whole community and county. You throw that on top and it helps, you know, if I'm a family looking to move my kids, and you know, it helps.
The other thing that helps too, I would think, was so competitive when these families are moving in here is the amount of recruiting that's been going on at both of your schools the past 2 years. You're having another huge one this year with Nate. But so many other kids get noticed along that way when they're recruiting a Van Jefferson or when they're recruiting a Nate Johnson. And then the other thing too, that goes back to playing 5 more weeks is when these guys are coming through on the recruiting trail, you all are actually still practicing. So while a lot of these guys have already taken up helmets and shoulder pads, they can actually see them live on the practice field. And a guy like, you know, Andrew Bunch, we know it's all going to work out, but maybe because someone was there seeing Nate, a guy like Chris Rowland, that gives them another chance to see a look at him, and it just, you know, it helps in the college recruitment of it. And if that's what your goals are for your kid, maybe when you're looking at the school to go, that's a check in the pro column for your school.
Exactly. There's been a great, you know, I know Coach Hester will say the same thing. We've had a lot of traffic come through our school, and they're all watching, so they pull up Nate Johnson's huddle highlights or Van Jefferson's. They're seeing who's throwing them the ball, who else is blocking. They're getting exposure, and that's hard to get that everywhere. And we've both been fortunate to have some big time recruits that have really highlighted our schools and given our schools an avenue for the kids to get exposure.
In recruiting news, you talked about Nate Johnson. As of right now, Nate Johnson has committed to the University of Michigan. Andrew Bunch, give us a little update on Andrew Bunch, the quarterback for Independence. What's the latest recruiting news?
Well, he was offered last week by Tennessee Tech. You know, he currently has Jacksonville State, Austin Peay, Charleston Southern, as well as Eastern Michigan had offered as well. So, I mean, he's got some choices. He's not sure where he wants to do just yet. We anticipate over the next month, 5 or 6 weeks, we'll see. We hopefully have some other opportunities for him to make the best choice possible. But he does have some valid options in front of him right now.
I think the sentiment across the state right now with anybody you talk to, whether they're a fan, whether they're a coach, is that Andrew Bunch is a diamond in the rough for sure. Why in the world that any of the big power conference teams are not recruiting him? You know, the size has been thrown up, but it's just like you say, have said many times, if you watch the kid, regardless if it's in a game or in practice, he will outperform usually majority of the people that he comes up against.
Yeah, we think so. We think he's, I just finished my 19th season, and he's the most accurate quarterback I've ever coached. and he can make every throw. He's also can run. He's also tough. He's also smart. He's got every, not just book smart football IQ. He's got every intangible you want from a quarterback. But it's also tough. There's a quarterback is evaluated really through a microscope. There's 127 Division 1A programs. Not everybody's going to take a quarterback every year. That's something that they go through a different process than maybe a receiver or a lineman or something. But we hope that in the end he gets what he wants out of it. And we know he's a terrific quarterback, and he'll make somebody real proud at the next level.
Coach Hester, you coached in the East-West All-Star game last week. You were the West offense coordinator. Andrew was your quarterback. That's got to be pretty neat. A guy that you've seen through the year and the years before on film and things like that, but then to coach him, you got to see a lot of that up close and personal.
Absolutely. I mean, we kind of spoke about it. I knew at the point when we scrimmaged that I was going to be doing that, and so I tried to encourage him to stay healthy so that he could play with us. Unfortunately, we weren't real great on the offensive line in the old All-Star game there, so we had to do some different things. But Andrew played great. Had right at 200 yards passing, I think, in a game where we didn't have much offense. Him and Rontavious Groves hooked up on some deep balls, but it was practice where Andrew really showed out. I mean, he was phenomenal in practice. Him and Zach Weatherly. Zach got a little ding in the game too, so didn't get many reps. So it was a great experience. Chris Rowland had 2 really big catches in the All-Star game for about 55 yards, and Andrew Luchins had 6 or 8 tackles. So
Tyrell Dotson played well too.
Tyrell Dotson was named the defensive MVP of the West.
And only played, 15 snaps, something like that, roughly, maybe more?
I think Tyrell played
Did he
more
play
than
more?
that.
Okay, but he ended up having 10 or 12 tackles
12
on the day.
tackles.
12 tackles on the day, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he played phenomenal. And the McLemore kid from Centennial was there. Big defensive end, played well, and the offensive tackle from Centennial was also there.
So in recruiting news, you mentioned Chris Rowland, who you used heavily as a run first option on your offense at the East-West game. Where is he going? What's his recruiting news right now, as well as anybody? Cruz Holt, Mr. Football this year, kicker of the year.
Cruz is Division I off right now is West Point Army. Got a ton of interest from basically every school in the country. I think he'll probably get a few more here right before signing day as people decommit and scholarship offers open up and that kind of stuff. Kicker's usually kind of unfortunately the bottom on the totem pole there as far as that situation goes. And then Chris has heated up since the championship game. Tennessee Tech is offered, TSU's offered, a lot of 1AA interest. Miami of Ohio and some of those guys, as far as the MAC, have got on him here as of late, as well as West Point with him as well. So we'll expect those guys to have a lot of opportunities. Jordan Moore, our nose guard, has picked up some Division II NAIA type offers here in the last week or so. So there's going to be some guys that have some options. And then we got some kids that will also choose to walk on at a high level instead of going Division II or Division III, just so they can experience that that level of football. And several of them want to get into coaching as a career, and it behooves them to walk on at the highest level they can in order to do that, to build more relationships with guys that are upwardly mobile.
Well, with Rowland, we mentioned with Bunch, we talked about possibly sometimes that the size throws people off. The quarterback, prototypical quarterback, 6'2", 6'3". Rowland is not, he weighs what, 175 maybe? But he's very elusive. Does his size play a factor in anything that comes when recruiting happens? Does the size ever come up? If he was bigger or if he
I
was...
think the height is definitely the thing that's holding him back. He's a legit 4'4" guy. He's a 10,800-meter runner. I mean, the film doesn't lie. He's one of the best returners that have come through here in a long time. So obviously that is the drawback. He doesn't fit the cookie-cutter mold, and they'll tell you that. You'll have a Division I receiver coach come through and say that he's not what he can take back to the head coach because of his height and things of that nature. So a lot of those teams have one guy like that, that Tavon Alston type guy that West Virginia had, but they're not recruiting multiple guys like that. So the key is finding the right fit.
Okay, so let's get into the games. Let's talk about what actually happened, transpired at the state championship games. We'll start on the 5A side since it was on Friday night. Coach Blade, just a silly question off the bat. When did you realize, when did it sink in? Was it after the clock hit all zeros, or was it at pretty much, did you feel confident all the way through the game, particularly going into halftime? Because at halftime, I had a deja vu moment of the Ravenwood game the year before. 28-7, everything's going your way. you kind of, I wouldn't say let your foot off the pedal, but they came back and actually scored and was getting the ball back at half. And I was like, okay, here we go. I tried myself not to get too excited, but too much firepower. You came out second half, picked up right where you left off. When did it actually hit us? We're going to win this game.
Well, we got off to a fast start, and we've done that all year. So that was kind of nice to do at the, on the championship game. And second quarter, we lost the momentum. We had a couple drives where we did not go down and score, and they had driven the ball down on the field and scored once and turned it over once, but we knew they had stole the momentum. We had a little attitude adjustment at halftime, we'll just call it that, and put our foot back on the gas, refocused, and took it over in the third quarter. You never kind of, unfortunately, I've been on the other side of that, giving up a big lead a year ago, and so we never kind of, until that clock says zero, or they put on the running clock. But for me personally, until it's zero and the game is over, there's a lot of things going on. And at that point, we knew we're going to get the gold ball, and all is well.
Yeah, and remember, I mean, these guys were in the state championship game, so it wasn't like we were playing. They're a good football team with it, and got a really good quarterback too. So, but it was amazing how you all, not amazing. I think we kind of expected it, but still to get there and handle it. The business, the way that you did. I mean, a running clock in the state championship game, that's hard to believe. I think it was the second touchdown. I'd love to know what you saw, but I think it was the second one. They'd been bracketing Nate all game long. We got down there, I believe it was a fourth down. You called timeout, put in a play. You ran that out route. Was that the second touchdown to Nate? I mean, it was really unfair to that kid.
We were trying to get him involved. Nate, whether it be running it out of the backfield or whether it be a little slip screen or whatever, just trying to get the ball in his hands. The way they were bracketing Nate, they had a DB inside of him and then a safety also inside him. So they were bracketing him, kind of. I would say double team covering him, but they weren't taking away the outside and the inside. So that was an easy one for us. They're double teaming him, but they're both inside leverage on him. So we just do a little out route there and got him involved, and later on they single covered him, and we got him on a sluggo. They were doing some things that were interesting for us. Danny Wright had a couple of touchdowns out of the backfield, and they were double teaming. They were trying to play a cover too high and sending their safeties with the slots and no one on the running back. And Danny had 500 or 600 yards receiving this year, so that's another. There's no one giving him attention. So that's kind of how we do our offense. It's not really a system offense. It's more of a matchup. How are you going to play us? This is what we like versus this. And we were fortunate we got everybody involved in that one. We had 5 or 6 receivers catch balls, a couple, 3 or 4 get to run a ball. So it worked out well for us.
You mentioned the running clock. Now, 5 games total in the playoff run. 4 of those games were running clock. Hillsborough was the only non-running clock game. He had 11 minutes time of possession the first half and had 28 points. They had 13 minutes and only had 7 points on the clock. Now, there was one point in time there you were trying to get that last touchdown in right before halftime, make it 35 to get that running clock going into half. It didn't work. That's when they came back and scored. But, to go 5 games in the playoffs, including semis, against one of the top defenses in 5A and Centennial and still have a running clock is pretty impressive.
Yeah, this team was special. It starts with that quarterback. Well, starts up front, giving us enough time for the quarterback to do what he's doing. He's a special quarterback. You throw in an elite receiver and really good receivers and running back everywhere else. So, there wasn't really a weakness. Everybody got involved. But the quarterback, his ability to, and he spent the last 3 years, kind of working on the same page as me. What am I looking at? What are we trying to, read here? And he's done a great job of it. And he'll be tough to replace. Those guys don't come along very often. And he played extremely well when it mattered the most.
Well, I enjoyed watching, too, your play calling when you talk about him because he is such in control of the team, such in control of the offense. He turns, he looks, you do your thing, you're looking at the defense, obviously what's given to you at that point in time. I think he reads your mind, too. I think there's many times that he may have saw something the play before that, you're fixing to call up. He already knows it's coming. And to have an extension of a coach out on the field running the most important position has to be,
Well, he'll even turn to me and give me a sign. Let's do this. okay, it's your offense, you know. But it's honestly, I'm dating myself, but it's like I'm the, you know, the joystick here on the Pac-Man game, and his brain is, you know, he just gets it. I mean, he gets what we're trying to do. He understands by a couple of hand signals, this is the concept we're working on here, and you know, he gets it. And again, that's credit to him. You know, he's smart. Like I said, not only book smart, but he's got a real high football IQ, and able to really take this offense to the next level.
Well, you mentioned the other receiver, Pierre Watkins, I think, opened up with the first 3 or 4 receptions,
Yeah.
and then you had Adam Swayze in the bunch. And there was one possession I was going to ask you about. They went out and you called a 3, and I think it was that a slot route where you
Yeah, it's just a 10-yard out.
and it was so automatic because you were jumping up and down trying to get the play in and yelling at him because whatever the defense did opened up the door for the touchdown, and sure enough, it was an automatic touchdown.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and sometimes, you know, Pierre's on the same side as Nate, and so we're throwing to the left side, for instance, on this one, and the safety might look like a cover 2, and the safety would be our read. Well, the safety before the snap rolls over to double Nate. Well, you just give him his read.
Right.
I mean, literally, he just has to take the ball and throw it. So, I mean, you've already predetermined. He's got no progression, you know, throughout the play. So that's where, you know, Pierre, automatically, here comes the ball.
Well, you outscored your opponents on the year 470 points. It's pretty amazing. 641 to 171. You know, that's one of the most impressive stats. You know, Murray State coach was there at practice, and we were talking about that, and I threw that stat at him. At that time, it was 500 and whatever. And I think that was something that he did the same thing, eye-opening. Now, in a pass-heavy offense, it's easy, but your defense kind of flew under the radar all year long.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, you know, we still had 2,700 yards rushing. So it's not like that. I mean, we prefer to throw the ball first, but we're going to take what they give us. I thought the Danny Wright and that run, that the offensive line did a great job of running the ball as well. The defense did, you know, was the difference this year as opposed to the last couple of years. The defense really came into their own, held people down to 10, 11 points, 12 points throughout the whole year. And, I mean, in this offense, you get a stop or two, and, you know, all of a sudden you're down, you score that quick. Now you got a defense, 21-28 to nothing in the middle of the second quarter, and the offense is doing stuff they don't want to do to try and catch up. So it's a domino effect there, and that's what I've said all year long. This group, the offense and defense, really fed off each other and tried to one-up each other all year and made for a fun team.
Coach Scott Blade, head coach, 5A state champion, first undefeated team, wins 49-14 over Sevier County. That moves us to the 6A state championship game. Maryville High School, 44-game win streak coming in, 35-34 loss in overtime last year to those guys. So my first question has to be, what did last year's results do to your team as far as making strides into this game?
I mean, I think it just was motivation through the offseason more than anything else. I mean, we had 36 seniors this year. All those guys participated in one way or another in that championship game last year, and you know that taste was in their mouth for 365 days. And they decided, that, you know, the first week of January last year that they were going to do everything in their power to get us back to that situation, to have an opportunity to avenge that loss. And we did that, and those guys were all gassed up going into the game. Not a lot of people probably gave us much of an opportunity to knock off the mighty Maryville in the 44-game win streak, but our guys believed it, and you know, it was kind of surreal all day long. You know, you kind of had that feeling that things were going to go our way, and you know, the belief that our kids had, that, you know, they just had that refuse to lose mentality.
Well, you kept saying, you told me that they may be the better team, they may have the better athletes, but they're not going to outplay it. Your kids believe that 100% all the way throughout the year. As the playoffs, as you kept increasing your wins and getting to that game, the kids completely bought in and believed, and they were not going to be outplayed in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And going into the game, we probably thought we were outmatched a little bit, but once we got in the game, I think it wasn't like what we thought it was going to be. We were better up front than they were on both sides of the football. You know, their sophomore quarterback had only thrown 2 interceptions all season, and both of which were in the playoffs. The 2 weeks prior to us playing them, he threw 3 against us. You know, we were able to stop them on the goal line a couple of times. They struggled to block our guys up front, and that was a big deal for us. And we were a lot more physical than they were at a lot of spots, and that, you know, we didn't really know that was the case going in. It's hard to tell that off film, but once you got out there, we felt pretty good about it.
I think one thing that helped them a lot, you mentioned the only interceptions he threw were in the last 3 games, and I don't think it was by design. I think he had the toughest draw in 5A, and I'm glad it happened that way. But the 5 games that he won, I don't think anybody in 5A played as tough as a schedule. I think you definitely played a tougher schedule regular season than Maryville. You definitely had a harder road in the playoffs, and I think that paid off. And like we said, I think that's the first time that quarterback at Maryville had seen anything like that. And for a sophomore, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, they struggled to protect him early in the game against our down guys. And, we weren't bringing but 3 or 4 guys most times. And, the ability to drop 8 defenders and still get pressure on the quarterback made a huge difference. Those windows aren't very big, and, he had the opportunity to throw some stuff, and we were able to get our hands on them and take them away. So can't say enough about our defense. Defense definitely wins championships. I mean, you can score a lot of points and outscore them, but in the end, just like Coach Blade says, the difference in his season this year was the play of the defense. And, the reason we were where we were was the play of our defense. And, it's just the key to playing championship caliber football.
Well, they came out early. You could tell that they felt like they're going to have to do something early to set a precedence. They came out, they throw a little wrinkle at you guys. It was a halfback pass over, and they set the wall up down the side, or was that a kick return? I can't remember.
It was a halfback. It was a throwback to the quarterback in the second quarter there.
Right, so they tried to throw a wrinkle. You came back with your own wrinkle there with a touchdown pass off a sweep from
Roland to Carter Nelson.
Right.
Yeah, we were 100% run out of that stack eye formation the entire season. So, we traded all 14 games with them. So, they grind over the film at Maryville. I knew that they were going to be well aware that every single time we had lined up like that, we had ran the football. So, we had a first down inside the 10 and wanted to take a shot at a cheap one. So we called the halfback pass. Chris had thrown the ball earlier in the year, I think maybe the first game of the year, for a 35-yard completion. So we knew that we'd worked it all year. We knew that Chris could throw it. So we ran it, and it hit, and that was a big play for us.
Yeah, and, sitting here with Coach Will Hester, the man that outcoached George Qualls. I always told you that you spell victory Qualls with 2 L's, not an R. I got one question for both of you before we get off here. How do you keep your team hungry after doing what both of you did this year? I'll start with you, Coach Blade.
That's a challenge. That's a challenge when we get back in January to reset goals, refocus on our goals, and see what type of, and start from, it's not starting from ground zero, but it is starting from now. The expectations are there. We are coming off an undefeated season, but those seniors are gone. So it'll be a challenge to see how those upcoming seniors accept that responsibility and their work ethic and everything else, and we'll take it one day at a time.
In our situation, we preach that every team's a different team. We got to create a new identity with this group of kids and what it's going to look like and how it's going to be. And we lose 36 seniors, we'll have 32 or 33 seniors next year. So the key for us is to establish over the course of this offseason what our identity is going to be. And it'll boil down to it's those kids' teams, and it'll become what they want to make it. They've been around and seen a lot of success, and I'm a big believer in that success breeds the possibility for success. So we have to go out and continue down that path and commit to the process each and every year like we did this year, and we'll see where this group can take us.
Well, in all seriousness, I greatly appreciate both of you being here today. It's been super fun. Congratulations on both of you winning titles. We'll see you next time. This has been WCS Sports Connection.